You've heard those stories about tricksters, stories where someone breaks free from the script that society wrote for them, where boundaries shatter through deliberate transgression, where established rules no longer hold power, and you sense something deeply true hiding beneath the chaos they create. This exploration is for anyone who has wondered why these rule-violating figures haunt every culture and mythology, and more importantly, what they reveal about the shadow sides of yourself that you've learned not to show. By the end of this psychology video, you'll understand that the trickster isn't just a character in old tales. The trickster is a fundamental pattern in your own psychology, one that Carl Jung identified as necessary for becoming whole. Think back to the last time you bent a rule or told a half-truth. That moment wasn't a failure of character. That was the trickster emerging from within you. In ancient mythology across cultures, from Loki in Norse tales to Anansi in West African traditions, from Coyote to Hermes, the trickster violates norms, deceives, and disrupts established order. Yet the trickster doesn't destroy out of mere malice. This figure exposes the brittleness of false certainty, the rigidity that prevents growth, the pretense that masks truth. Carl Jung recognized the trickster as an archetypal force, a primordial pattern from the collective unconscious that shows up in your dreams, impulses, and hidden desires. The trickster is the part of you that questions authority without permission, that sees through social masks, that recognizes when the emperor has no clothes. What if the trickster's appearance signals something essential that you've been taught to fear and suppress? The trickster exists on the boundary between what society allows and what you truly desire, between the rules and the forces that break them. This makes the trickster dangerous to any established system, which is why every culture has told trickster stories to understand their own disruption. The trickster shows up when the world has become too fixed, too certain of its own rightness. Consider Prometheus stealing fire for humanity. This transgression against Zeus's authority delivered something essential: progress itself. Prometheus violated divine law, not from greed but from recognition that humanity needed what the gods withheld. This mirrors a psychological truth Jung explored. Sometimes growth demands transgression. Sometimes becoming whole requires breaking the rules you've internalized about who you're allowed to be. The trickster in your own psyche operates similarly. It questions your assumptions, refuses the limitations others placed on you, and sees gaps between what you're told and what you experience. This internal trickster isn't pathological. It's a messenger from the unconscious, pointing toward places where your conscious self has become rigid and false. Jung wrote extensively about the shadow and transformation. The shadow contains everything you've rejected about yourself, the anger you suppress, the selfishness society deems unacceptable, the desires that don't fit your constructed image. The trickster is the shadow's most eloquent spokesperson. It doesn't apologize for these rejected parts. It exposes their necessity. A person without anger has no healthy boundaries. A person who denies all selfishness cannot give freely. A person who represses all forbidden desire slowly dies inside. Here lies one of psychology's deepest paradoxes. The trickster achieves genuine insight through deception. Anansi tricks both humans and animals in West African folklore, yet through his schemes, he often teaches valuable lessons about survival and human nature. He doesn't teach through direct instruction but through situations where the person being tricked must confront something real about themselves. This reflects something true about human psychology. Direct confrontation triggers defensive reactions. When someone shows you something real through experience, even through deception, transformation becomes possible. The trickster bypasses your defensive structures and reaches the deeper patterns that need change. Notice when growth has come not through instruction but through disruption. Perhaps someone you trusted disappointed you, and through that disappointment, you learned something essential about yourself. The trickster operates through this same mechanism, disruption as teaching. Jung recognized that the unconscious often communicates through symbols that bypass rational thought. Dreams show you trickster figures because your psyche is trying to wake you to something your mind refuses to see. The person you despise often mirrors something you refuse to see in yourself. The trickster isn't merely destructive, it's profoundly creative. Creation requires breaking the established order, pushing against what exists to generate something new. Every genuine innovator carries a trickster quality, a willingness to violate conventions and pursue ideas that don't fit existing categories. You cannot create anything truly original by simply following what already exists. Think about scientific breakthroughs that initially seemed like violations of established truth. Copernicus proposing that the Earth orbited the Sun was a cosmic trickster act. Freud talking openly about desire and the unconscious violated Victorian propriety to expose psychological truths society wanted hidden. These weren't reckless acts, they were courageously trickster-like. In your own creative work, whether at business, relationships, or personal development, the trickster emerges when you reject the template you're supposed to follow and forge something distinctly your own. A musician who changes genre, a professional who quits a stable job to do what they actually want, a person who leaves a relationship that looked perfect but felt suffocating. These are trickster acts, and they're essential to genuine living. Cultures that entirely suppress the trickster archetype grow brittle, vulnerable to sudden violent eruptions of chaos. When you suppress the trickster within yourself, you don't become more stable, you become rigid and increasingly disconnected from your own vitality. The trickster prevents you from hardening into a role that no longer fits who you're becoming. Yet the trickster also reveals something darker. The line between breaking rules for good reasons and breaking rules to hurt people is thin. Loki shows this. He's clever, but his tricks eventually destroy everything at Ragnarok. The difference is simple. Without wisdom and care for others, rule-breaking becomes pure destruction. This tension mirrors your own psychology. You contain the capacity for both genuine liberation and genuine harm. The person who breaks an unjust rule is a truth teller. The person who breaks commitments because they feel constrained might be avoiding responsibility. The person who sees through social hypocrisy is wise. The person who uses that seeing as justification for cruelty has become something else entirely. Jung emphasized that integrating shadow content doesn't mean indulging every impulse. It means conscious relationship with these forces. A person who lies compulsively hasn't integrated the trickster. They are controlled by the trickster archetype. A person who can tell a careful truth when needed, who sees through false authority without becoming destructive, who breaks harmful rules without shattering their own integrity, that person has begun integrating the trickster archetype. The distinction is the difference between wisdom and mere cleverness. The evolved trickster serves transformation and truthfulness, even through disruption. The primitive trickster serves only the ego's desire for dominance, amusement at others' expense, or transgression divorced from meaning. Which version are you expressing? One of the trickster's greatest gifts is perspective shift. The trickster reveals that what you assumed was true might be false, what seemed permanent might be changeable, what you believed was your identity might be just a role. This is simultaneously liberating and destabilizing. When the trickster reveals that the emperor has no clothes, everyone who invested in that illusion feels lost. You stand between what you no longer believe and what you don't yet know, and that's where change happens. You cannot change while convinced your current situation is inevitable and right. The trickster forces you to question everything, and from that questioning, genuine choice emerges. You rebuild your understanding consciously rather than simply accepting inherited frameworks. A sudden disappointment becomes a gift, not because the disappointment is good, but because it forces you to reassess your judgments and trust. The person who disappointed you was a trickster in your psychological drama, and through that disappointment, you were forced to become wiser and more discerning. You become capable of deeper trust because it's now chosen rather than assumed. This is the trickster's alchemy, turning chaos into wisdom, deception into clarity. Jung identified the encounter with the shadow, including the trickster archetype, as essential to individuation and wholeness. You cannot become whole while rejecting half of your own nature. The person who has never acknowledged the trickster within themselves is constantly surprised by their own impulses, controlled by unconscious forces they refuse to recognize, prone to projecting their own trickster nature onto others. Integrating the trickster means developing trickster wisdom, the capacity to see through illusions while respecting necessary structures, to question authority while recognizing that some boundaries serve genuine purposes, to challenge convention while understanding that not all conventions are oppressive. It means becoming capable of creative rule-breaking in service of truth and growth. This integration shows up differently depending on context. In creative work, it appears as innovation and genre violation. In relationships, it appears as the capacity to gently challenge self-deceptions without cruelty. In personal development, it appears as honesty about when you're deceiving yourself, living according to someone else's script, when the image you maintain costs too much authenticity. The integrated trickster is the part of you that can laugh, not meanly, but with genuine humor, at human pretense and self-importance. Humor and trickster energy are deeply connected because both involve sudden perspective shifts and revealing surprise. When you can laugh at yourself, you're exercising trickster wisdom. Jung emphasized that the trickster cannot be eliminated. It's part of the psyche's fundamental structure. The question is never whether you'll have a trickster within you. The question is whether you'll relate to it consciously or be controlled by it unconsciously. The person who has integrated trickster awareness can navigate complex situations with genuine honesty, recognize manipulation because they understand its mechanics, and be trusted precisely because they are capable of deception but choose not to abuse that capability. Trickster energy will continue to emerge in your life because disruption and transformation are constants in human existence. You will face moments where your certainties crack, where rules seem arbitrary, where you're tempted to break boundaries not from malice but from genuine sense that something true lies beyond. How you meet those moments determines whether the trickster remains an unconscious force that controls you or becomes a conscious capacity that serves your evolution. The trickster in mythology never disappears. Loki binds Fenrir only to be bound himself. Anansi's tricks catch up with him even as his cleverness saves him. Hermes steals cattle on the day he's born, yet becomes a god of commerce and communication. These aren't morality tales about punishment. They are descriptions of how trickster energy moves through reality, always present, always creating new situations, always pointing toward the possibility of transformation. When you feel pulled toward rule-breaking, toward exposure of pretense, toward chaos that might clear false structures, pause and ask what the trickster is trying to show you. Is it pointing toward genuine injustice, real hypocrisy, authentic need for change? Or is it serving your ego's desire for power or the thrill of transgression? This discernment is the work of integrating the trickster wisely. It doesn't require suppressing the impulse. It requires understanding it deeply enough to choose how it will express. The gift of understanding the psychology of the trickster is understanding a fundamental force within your own being. You are not separate from mythology. You are mythology in motion. The archetypal patterns Jung identified aren't abstract concepts. They are the actual structures through which your consciousness organizes itself. By recognizing the trickster within, you gain agency over a force that has always operated within you, sometimes wisely and sometimes destructively. In that recognition, you move toward the wholeness Jung identified as the true goal of psychological development, not perfection, but integration, not purity, but authenticity.